Hi, everybody. Welcome to Spill the OT podcast, season 2. And today we are talking about NDT, so neurodevelopmental treatment. And we have a person who has gone through the whole NDT training, and she's going to give us so much information, and it's just really exciting. And I hope that you enjoy it. Before we get to that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has rated and reviewed this podcast. As always, if you like this podcast, please give it a 5-star review on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever other platform you're listening to. If you don't like the podcast, that's totally cool, but please don't give a lower rating because it just really hurts my ego more than anything else. So please show the love, give it 5 stars, or just ignore it and don't worry about it. Also, I am always looking for guests to come on the podcast. So if you are in the therapy field or thinking about joining the therapy field, I would love to hear from you. You can reach me on Instagram and spill_the_OT, or you can email me at spilltheot@gmail.com. And literally, this is your podcast as much as it is mine. So if you have anything that you want to say, whether you want to talk about why you decided to explore this field, or if you want to share about a particular diagnosis or a particular setting, whatever information that you would like to share, I consider very valuable. So if you have anything to say, you are more than welcome to reach out to me and we can set up a time for you to come on here. All right, so without further ado, let's learn a little bit more about NDT.
I got my bachelor's in health sciences and then my master's in occupational therapy from a school here in Michigan. And I did a 4-in-1 program. So I finished with my master's really just shy of 4 years. It was a year-round program. So I did that pretty quickly. I did one of my clinicals at a hospital site where I did inpatient adult rehab and inpatient adult psych. I split the rotation there, and then I did my other rotation for outpatient pediatrics. And I have been an OT for just over 6 years, and I have worked in pediatrics the entire time since I've been out of school in a variety of settings, including hospital-based inpatient pediatrics, as well as outpatient pediatrics. I've contracted to a school, and currently I am in our early intervention program, whereas in the state of Michigan, it is kind of mandated through the school systems. So I work for a local ISD where I provide early intervention services from kids aged 0 to 3 years old.
So can you start us off by telling us a little bit about NDT and just what that is?
Yes. So when you're in school, you hear the term NDT talking about neurodevelopmental treatment. And we do a couple classes that give you an idea of the framework of, the Bobaths who started it. But to get the certification outside is a lengthy one, but I would say it's very well worth it. I had a mentor when I was in school, and who was a clinical instructor for me, and then ended up being a supervisor for me, who had an NDT background. The way NDT works is there's an adult and pediatric course. So the adult course is shortened. I think that they do it over a 2-month time period now, whereas the pediatric course went from like a July through June. So it was a year. So you would go to the facility that was hosting it for like a 4-day weekend, pretty much about once a month. They had it broken up that way, so it was easier for working therapists. They used to do straight 8 weeks, I believe, but it's not like that anymore. So for a year, me and a physical therapist that was a friend of mine, we went out to the other side of the state and did it at a hospital based out there for over the course of a year. And it taught me so much about looking at the total body. And as occupational therapists, we're all really good at, being cognizant of a total being and, their posture and alignment. But this just taught me so much more. And not only as an OT, but there were PTs in the courses, there's speech therapists in the courses, and it's applicable to everyone because posture and alignment and how your body moves is the foundation for what all of us therapists do. So it really enhanced my skills that way. And it was eye-opening. It was very intense, the course. I'm not going to lie. You had to do a video to submit when you applied. And then every weekend you would be there, the course would run where you'd have like a lecture in the morning, and then you'd have a practicum for an hour where patients would come in and you'd work on your strategies for an hour. You'd have lunch, and you'd have to sign up during lunch for the weekend to have a meeting with the two instructors, whether there was always a PT there, and then it was either a speech therapist or occupational therapist, and they would critique the video that you would send in. And then you'd have come back from lunch, have lab and more discussion, and then you'd treat another kid in the afternoon, and you would do that every day for 4 days. And then when you would go back to practicing for the next month, they would send you home with homework where you would do videos and you would submit treatment plans of an actual patient that you were treating. And those are the videos they would review with you during your lunches. So it could have been a little intimidating at first because there are these two professionals sitting across from you critiquing what you're doing in the videos, but it was so helpful. And now I'm totally not fazed by being videotaped for anything. You kind of, get used to that.
Wow, that is so much more intense than I was expecting.
Yep. I mean, it is, but I could see why, because they go over every area of development. They look at sensory, they look at baby development, they look at motor and cognition. We did oral motor stuff. So we learned oral motor techniques to help feeding. I mean, they really encompass the whole body. We look, even as occupational therapists and speech therapists in the course, we learned ambulation techniques and how to facilitate ambulation for our patients. And people might go, oh, well, why would an OT or speech therapist be working on that? It's because it's all function based. It's the beauty of NDT is that it's so functional. How can you be a therapist and not be cognizant of how the body moves and how you sit in alignment and how you move to and from a chair, to and from, a toilet in the bathroom? All of those things are important for every domain of practice. So I really enjoyed that part of it, which is probably why it's so lengthy, because there's so much to what's going on, whether it's motor, sensory motor based, all of those kind of things are included.
So you all would sequence through the same exact program no matter what your discipline?
Yep, we all went through the same program no matter what the discipline. They would have certain sections that may be more applicable. Like I said, we did do a lot of oral motor to help facilitate feeding and vocalizations. We also worked on rib cage mobility, and that can help with vocalizations, whether you're increasing increasing the volume of someone's voice or increasing their breath support and the depth of their breath. But we all went through the same program together.
This is so cool. Did you get a certification at the end?
Yep. So at the end of the course, you get a certification. You get some nice fancy initials after your name too. So you get the C/NDT, which means you're certified in neurodevelopmental treatment. You do have to renew it, just like everybody has to renew their license. You can renew every year to 2 years. You renew your membership, but then every 3 years you have to renew your certification, and you renew your certification by completing CEUs, continuing education, or professional development. At least 12 or 13 of them have to be an NDT approved course. So you are constantly learning because you're taking more NDT courses as they go.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then, do you happen to know the cost of the course that you took?
It was expensive. I can't remember, but I would want to say you couldn't quote me on it, but maybe $3,000 to $4,000.
Okay.
It was pricey. I cannot remember the exact cost. And that was the thing, I had only been out of OT school for 3 years, and I was like, well, do I want to do this? This is a big dedication. There's so many things to learn, and I'm so glad I did it. And I've told all of my students that I've had since, if you get the opportunity to do it, because I look at the body so much more completely and thoroughly now. And it's kind of a compliment to, your skills too, when you work with a team and the other members of the team, the other physical therapists of the team or the speech therapist ask you for help in another set of eyes to really look at what are we missing, what's going on with this alignment, and how can we facilitate better movement. And so that's kind of nice too. It really makes you more of an expert on that.
Yeah, because in school, we only had maybe 1 or 2 classes in one course where we talked about bow bath and that type of thing. So I feel like if this is going to be your main job, you really need to have some expertise in it. And it sounds like this very, very much prepares you for that.
It does. And it prepares you, any type of population is going to benefit from this. So I took the pediatric course, but when we took it, we actually had a couple adult therapists who were in it. Because they dealt with adult patients, but maybe their motor and cognitive abilities were not there. So it was nice because they got to see the whole chain of development. So you could take the adult course, but the pediatric course, starts right at the beginning. You're looking at babies, and you're moving up the ages, and so it's applicable for whoever and whatever setting you're working in. I mean, I could even see when I was working in the schools, I would use some of these techniques for improving posture at the lunch table and for in the classroom. So it's applicable to really every population, and it just makes you so much more cognizant of how alignment really does set up the foundation for function.
Can we kind of jump and you share a little bit of the specifics about like what a session would actually look like?
Yeah. So the way that NDT is set up is they really have you do a lot of preparatory activities to prepare the body, and then a lot of simulation activities, and then actually practicing the activity. That's how they have it set up. And it's so nice because the preparation activities involve components of what you might need. So if we were working on dressing, it might involve an activity. And I work with kids, so a lot of times this is play-based, but, something that's going to simulate the extension, flexion arm pattern, the overhead arm pattern. So you're doing some simulation activities or preparatory activities. The other part is NDT does use a lot of adjuncts, meaning that we use SPIO vests to give proprioceptive input. Maybe you use Theratogs for lower and upper extremity alignment, kinesio tape, or, sometimes we use immobilizers, those PD wraps to get extension. It just depends on the needs of the child. So that's all in the preparatory stuff. We do a lot of work on like big exercise balls. So that might be a lot of extension rotation going from sitting to your stomach, pushing up on the ball in a wheelbarrow position, coming back up to sitting. All of those rotation activities that involve extension are helping to prep the body. And then we would do a lot of simulation things. So again, if we were working on dressing, maybe we'd be using a hula hoop and, putting it overhead and letting it drop. Maybe we would be, because that's the, same upper body movements. It's similar, but it's not the exact same. And then maybe we do dress up with different types of clothing options, because that's how you're going to move your body. And then you'd actually practice the activity. So that's kind of how NDT structures their sessions. So it's preparation, simulation of similar movement components, and then actually practicing the activity. And that is probably one of the things that I think a lot of people, when they become NDT certified, love, is that at the end of the day, you got to practice the skill. And you might be bored, as an adult treating kids, I might be bored after doing dress up for a couple of minutes. But realistically, when people are learning a new motor pattern, or babies are learning to walk, and we're learning to get dressed, when we're learning something new, we practice it hundreds and thousands of times before we actually ever master it. So that's why simulation is, and actually practicing is such an important component, because you are building that repetition, creating that rote memory, that motor planning, the execution of the motor movements. So that's a big thing, is they're very functional based. We're not just going to do sit to stand or squat to sit just to do it as an exercise. We're going to do it because you need to practice putting cups up into the cupboard. We're going to do it because you got to go from sitting to standing to pull your pants up to get off the toilet. So we actually practice the everyday activities rather than let's just practice just squats, just an exercise. It's not about exercise. It's about the actual functional activity. So a lot of times that's what you're practicing.
You mentioned a couple pieces of equipment, and I was wondering if you could just explain what they are. One was a SPIO and one was the Theratogs.
Yep. So a SPIO vest is kind of made out of like a thinner neoprene material. A lot of times we use them in pediatrics to give like proprioceptive input to the body. So they're flexible. You can move. You can wear them under your clothing. Theratogs is developed by a physical therapist named Billy Cusick. She teaches a lot of courses on everything. She's brilliant. I've been to a couple of her courses, and she invented Theratogs as kind of, she calls it wearable therapy. And it's a combination between a thicker neoprene vest, or I think she might have some that are shirts, I'm not sure, and a lower extremity garment that goes around like the hips. Funny enough, you could think of them like they kind of look like chaps, but they're not. And then she has a lot of different ways that you can don them and wrap the body to facilitate. It's almost like another set of hands. These are preparatory things where if I can use this vest and help give a kid a little bit more extension if they need it, by how you put it on and how you can put it on their legs, and you can also like kind of wrap their leg outward to give them maybe a little bit more abduction. So it's another positioning thing, just like kids and adults who wear, you could call orthotics, AFOs, SMOs, all of those things are kind of for alignment. So these are both for alignment too.
Okay. And are these items that would be worn just for the therapy session, or would they keep these on for the rest of the day?
So it's usually a gradual process. We will try them in therapy if it's really it's really giving them what they're going to do. We might start with them wearing it in therapy. We might order it. And then eventually, like, we have plenty of kids that would wear the Theratog suit under their clothes throughout the day, because it's giving kids who might have varying types of cerebral palsy, who might need a little bit more help getting into better alignment. It's something that they can eventually, wear all day. That's the goal.
Okay, awesome. And I just have a quick story to share. I wasn't actually working with this student, but I remember the OT telling me that on this particular day, she had like a compression outfit. It might have been Theratogs. I don't actually know, but it was underneath her clothes. And she told me that she wasn't wearing it that day. And she literally, she was walking like a noodle. She had never walked like that when she had the garments under her items, but because she wasn't wearing it that day, it was that drastic.
Yeah. I have seen it really help a numerous amount of children, because it's giving them, that proprioceptive input that their body isn't getting. If your neuromuscular tone isn't, functioning properly, if you're not getting all the sensation feedback, if you're not able to move your body and use the proper muscle synergies to have, active movement, you are missing out on a lot of the sensory experience of life. We process sensory information at large amounts, overwhelming amounts, whether, you're taking in visual, auditory, but proprioception is a huge one, like being aware of where your body and space is. How many times have anybody worked with a patient and been like, man, can you not tell you're sitting on this mat table with me? Can you not, you can tell when someone isn't aware of where their body is in space, and it makes movement really hard.
Can you share a couple of the diagnoses that you would most use this technique with?
Yes. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm not endorsed by NDT, so I'm not getting paid to say any of these things, but you can use it with every single person. Sometimes I look at my husband and I'm like, can you please use your abs and glutes a little bit more and stop leaning on the counter and stand up upright? You can use it on anybody. It was common when we were treating in the clinic to see kids with varying types of cerebral palsy, for sure. Kids with Down syndrome, other genetic diagnoses. Those were common. Sometimes we would have kids on the autism spectrum that we would use it with, but really there's not a limitation. You could use it on kids varying from high tone to low tone to, just needing to work a little bit on motor coordination and praxis, those kind of things. You really can use it on anybody.
So this is basically like a foundational tool that you have that you use throughout basically all of your sessions?
Yep, I would definitely call it the foundation. This is, I look at posture and alignment and how these muscle synergies are or are not working together, and what that body looks like as the foundation for everything else. And it's really nice because you start to really become like an expert on that type of stuff, where you'll have other people that you work with that are like, I need some more ideas. What am I missing here? I had a coworker of mine who I love very dearly. who's a physical therapist, and she said to me, I need you to just come look at this kid. I'm missing something. So there's a huge value in knowing what the body can do and how you can facilitate it. And part of NDT is facilitation techniques, and that is, using your hands and positioning to facilitate muscles to activate and work together in the synergies they're supposed to. So there is a lot of hands-on components to NDT that you learn in the course, and then there's a lot of just positioning stuff as well. You're not just doing neuromuscular reeducation. It is so much more than that. And that's why I think people kind of hear NDT and they're like, wow, that's expensive. That's a big time commitment. Like, what's the big deal? Like, I'm only going to use it with my patients that have neurological issues. And that is not true at all. You're going to use it with everybody. And you're going to notice things in people all around you. You're going to notice different posture things. And your eyes become fine-tuned to looking at the body and noticing symmetries and asymmetries and, smooth, typical movement patterns. And then sometimes you might be like, oh, what's going on there? Like there's something that might be atypical going on. So NDT involves a lot of what's called like extension and rotation. So being able to extend your body against gravity, being able to rotate in and out of positions is huge. So we work a lot on those bigger exercise balls, building in a lot of flexion, extension, rotation. That's a huge thing. And another thing is I work a lot with anybody I've ever encountered on being able to facilitate that sit to stand or squat to stand, because the movements that you do from sit to stand and squat to stand, that is what you're going to use to climb up the stairs. That is what you're going to use to get in and out of a vehicle. That is what you're going to use, for everything. So if you don't have the ability to do that, it's going to limit a lot of your function for everything, because you got to think, how are you going to be able to get in and out of the shower if you can't lift your leg against gravity and flex at your hip? How are you going to be able to go up and down stairs, to climb on and off your bed?
I just want to say you are so well spoken, and I've learned so much. We've only been talking like 20 minutes, but you're blowing my mind.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's really nice. It's just something that I think it's worth hearing, and it's worth improving our field. A lot of times as an occupational therapist, people are like, don't know what we do. And you're like, well, we work on daily life tasks. And they're like, well, what does that mean? Like, you're going to teach me like what? And there's so much more. And the beauty of our profession is that we can work in so many different settings with so many different populations, whether you're working on like, home redesign, or you're working in pediatrics or vision rehab, driving rehab, that we just have such a big scope of practice. And I think people don't know how valuable we are. And a lot of times you do hear like, you're working on squatting and standing and walking. Well, isn't that like a physical therapy thing? Don't you work on the upper extremities, and don't they work on the lower extremities? And I think that people need to be more aware of, no, we don't just do that. Like, we're looking at we don't divide the body up. I can't just work on your arms because that's not a person. We look at the whole person. And the more that people are aware of that, the more I think they're going to understand our profession. It's going to help our profession grow.
And I think it's kind of our duty as OTs to spread that message, because I can't tell you how many patients I've had that say like, oh, you're the one that works on my arms. You're the one who does this. And you have to like take that chance and just explain what your purpose is, because if you don't, who will?
Hopefully by, things like this, like a fun podcast where people get to hear that and get to learn a little bit more. And the more that we advocate for our profession and educate, people in the community, the more recognition that people are going to find value in what we do and really know what we do too.
All right. Well, my last question that I ask everybody, if you could talk to your 18-year-old self, would you send yourself to OT school?
Yes. I think I would totally send myself to OT school. When I got involved in, starting OT school, I had experiences with OTs before and physical therapists, and I really liked the OT's perspective of things. I probably would tell myself to like not be so harsh on like where you're going to do your clinicals, because I like requested to our supervisor not to have any pediatric rotations. I was like, I think I want to do like hand therapy and like, I don't know, adults or something, maybe skilled nursing. And I was like, absolutely no pediatrics, like not want to do it. And at the time, I don't know if requirements have changed for schools, but we had a choice. And I was adamant on not working in pediatrics. And she put me there anyways. And 6 years later, that's primarily my focus area is pediatrics and, young kids and infants. So it's kind of funny. Like I was so gung ho about, oh no, I'm not going to do that. So I'd probably be like, yo, you're going to be fine. Tone it down. It's fine.
Oh, that's really funny. And we actually have a lot of OT students who listen to this. So take note, you students.
Yeah, take note, because I would have never thought in a million years that I would spend my days with babies and children and love it. I was also grateful that I did the rotation in the adult psych unit, and that just came about because my supervisor offered it to me. He said, you're doing really well. Do you want to go check out another area of the hospital? So take all the experiences you can get. Go watch the surgeries. Go look at all the different settings. Go do everything that you can do, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I will be excited to listen to it.
Okay, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at spilltheot@gmail.com, or I am on Instagram at spill_the_ot, and I hope to hear from you soon.